Good evening, friends, and welcome to Reflection on the Rock at Covenant United Methodist Church. I'm Reverend Ann Kemper. And as we continue our mini-series on past reflections, tonight's reflection is from September 12th, 2022. Reverend Margaret Scott interviewed Chelsey Barry about her experience with grief. This was a helpful interview in many ways, and one worth watching again.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Monday evening conversation, our Reflections on the Rock. It's a great joy to have with us today Chelsey Barry, whose voice you will certainly know. If you are regular in worship online or in person, you'll know Chelsey's voice. And we're thrilled that she's here to have a conversation with us today. And so welcome. And Chelsey has been going through a life experience that we all go through, and wants to share a little bit about how it has impacted her and what it's been like. And hopefully we can all relate. I know I can. Go.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret, and thank you so much for having me. I just love it here, and I just love what you're doing, and the reflections that I watch each week are always, they always resonate on some level, so it's really cool to be here, so thank you. I was really honored that to have the opportunity to come and sit and talk with you, not only because I just love the sound of your voice, but
What's both ways? I love hear the song of your voice.
It's been 6 months since my sweet dad passed away, and I have been so fortunate to have the Covenant family around me, but it has been such an interesting experience. This grief stuff, and I have certainly felt loss, as we all have. But I can say that there has never been anything that has impacted me so holistically, so deeply in every way. And one of the things that I reflect on daily is the grief with the grace and gratitude. All sort of, if you were to sort of look at this in a Venn diagram, I think you would probably see God.
Yeah, the Trinity,
right in
all
the middle.
those three overlapping circles, and that little one in the middle would be the divine.
Ma'am.
Yeah.
At least, and my brain often, outlines and diagrams things, and that's sort of how I've been experiencing this. And that is not to say that it has not been treacherous, but I am amazed at the learning when I sort of give this grief that I'm experiencing space in my life and in my day,
and voice,
and a voice all the time, and I don't try to push it aside or stuff it down. I just bring it right along with me, like it's driving next to me in the car. I've observed how it's sort of manifested, and as that happens, I'm also seeing the humanity, the love, the relatability, I don't know what that word might be, but of people around me, and how relevant it is to other people.
Yeah, how connected we all are.
Absolutely.
Everybody experiences it somehow or other. Differently. Everybody does it differently.
It is about the most unique experience you can have. I mean, I think it's, right down to our DNA. I think it's extremely unique, extremely personal, but it is something that we all go through or will go through. And as dark as sometimes may be, and I'll tell you, Margaret, I'm a pretty happy person.
I know
intrinsically. I'm just, there's always something good. I'm one of those, glass half full, silver lining
that's why
people.
you've got two other GRs, gratitude and grace,
right?
Because you need that to balance yourself.
Absolutely. But there have been some dark days.
Dark days where you don't feel the grief. You only feel the grief.
You only feel the grief.
Yeah.
But as dark as those days have been, there is light. And I always think of the, I don't know if you ever saw the movie Castaway with Tom Hanks.
Oh,
but when he comes back from the island, he says to his buddy, how did you get through this? And he said, I realized that as bad as it gets, tomorrow the sun will rise.
Yeah.
And there's always a path forward. So that's what's been on my mind a lot, obviously.
Wow. And do you have any idea why this particular grief is different from other griefs? Is it the closest one you've ever had, or is it because of your life stage, or because you're more aware of yourself now, or what? Why do you think this one's different?
I think you just made another Venn diagram in my
Maybe, yeah. How did I've got my little
bit of
hands
everything
going here.
I think it's a great question with a couple of different answers. Number one, my father was a very, very strong presence. He, since my earliest days, kind of was a regulator for me, whether, I've always sort of had a sense of not belonging, or maybe I was like the chubby kid in gym class that didn't get picked. There was always that growing up stuff, but with Dad, I was always sort of the light in the room for him. And he was always very vocal in his support and his love. And he was unbelievably consistent. And he was present. Dad would stop by the house whenever the heck he felt like it, often bringing donuts just to make his I was just driving by, but we had an incredible closeness, and he was and he was just a connecting point for my family, my siblings and I. So I think also at this time in my life, our relationship went, while it was always father-daughter, he became kind of a pal. And he was close to my husband, and we often did things together, and we just had a very, very good relationship. And when he passed away, it was not expected. It wasn't sudden as in a tragic, accident, but it was not expected. And there has been for quite some time the feeling that his absence is taking up even more space than his presence did, because it is this sort of slowly letting go of the lunches and the holidays and the conversations and the check-ins and the random stop-bys. And so I think it's just hitting all of these things,
right?
And it's sort of an awakening to this life without him here, and learning to accept a life with him sort of in this energy that I imagine him to be now.
Right.
So I'm just kind of going through that process.
Yeah. Wow. What do you miss most about him?
Oh, Dad, gosh. His poetic heart, his nature.
I wasn't expecting that one.
It is very true, and anyone that knows Dad would know. In fact, when I gave his eulogy at his funeral, one of the things that I made sure to mention was I have this reel in my head of the things that he used to say to me.
Yeah. And
I think many people walking the earth have trauma in their lives, and they hear the nasty things over throughout their years, or they hear belittling or for me, I have a tape of, "Hiya, cakes. Did I tell you how much I love you today? Have I told you how proud I am of you?" And he just kind of had this like schmaltzy, dorky dad way of affirming. Yeah. And gosh, do you know how proud I am? And this is the reel that plays in my head.
Wow.
And so when and what a gift. What a gift to have that on repeat. But I miss those little moments where I'd say, "Oh, Daddy, you want to come, check out the new garden?" Gosh, just so proud of what you've done to the garden.
Wow.
And you're like, oh. So it was a lot of that. I miss that sweetness.
Yeah. And the affirmation.
Oh, it was just wonderful. And he was kind, Margaret. He was so kind. And we joke because he loved to go to diners and get his little diner breakfast with his buddies. And we'd pick on him for flirting with the servers, but it was very, "Oh, don't you look nice today? And what a lovely smile." And it was always a very authentic, kind expression to anyone. And he would always make you feel better.
Yeah.
So I miss that.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of people walking around that have that ability.
Right.
And Dad was a master.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'll tell you that after he passed away, I realized I did not necessarily have that trait that he had, at least not on his level, and I probably never will. However, one of the ways that I keep his spirit alive and I honor his spirit is by being more kind to people. And something that wasn't necessarily in my nature needed to be very deliberate at first, but now it feels a little bit easier.
More natural.
And I love the feeling of just being nicer to people.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Well, and it's much needed in this world right now. There's not a lot of kindness walking around there.
I agree. Oh, and again, I'm a work in progress, and I always will be. But that is one thing that I appreciate about his, what he did for me and what he gave me was that ability. Right.
Yeah. And so where is, in this Venn diagram, I was going to say Zen, well it is kind of Zen, but this Venn diagram, what ways have you seen the connection between each of these circles and God that you said was in the middle? Where have you experienced that?
Oh, it is such an energy. What a great question. So number one is the grace that I see from others in the biggest and smallest ways. And I believe with my whole heart that God is love. God is love. I mean, it's the simplest way that I understand God. It's love. And so when I feel grace in the moments when I maybe don't deserve it, when I'm certainly not asking for it, when I'm not looking for it, it's just this little thing that happens. I think, my goodness, it has carried me through those dark days.
Right.
And growing up with a close relationship with God, the gratitude, I know how important that is. I feel it in my bones. And I want to be the grace that I hope to receive from others in those dark moments. So I think it's just noticing and I do believe that if you look for negativity, you will find it.
You'll find what you focus on.
That's exactly right. And if you look for grace, you will find it. And so this whole experience has set me on this path where I've become a lot more in tune to the good things that people do.
Right.
So that's been
and does
really
it also
cool.
make you attuned to when you see people suffering?
Absolutely. There's a empathy. I feel like I've always had a pretty good understanding of empathy, but I think understanding this whole, just getting this whole perspective, knowing full well that if I'm having a really, really difficult time and I'm crying or I'm pouting or I'm silent, somebody could easily look at me and say, geez, what the heck is wrong with her? Somebody could also look at me and say, geez, it looks like she's having a really tough time. Maybe, maybe I'll be nice. Yeah. And it doesn't hurt the person observing in either way, but it just isn't it a great thing to give somebody the benefit of the doubt. So that's been a little bit of a shift in my perspective.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense. Because you anytime I think that we're suffering, whatever it is, you know it when you see it in somebody else.
Oh, and there's nothing that tugs on my empathy strings more than people suffering, truly feeling just sadness, especially when they're in situations that are beyond their control. Although I still empathize with people that have made errors in their choices and feel sadness as a result. I don't think, it's not my place to judge you either way. But I do feel a tremendous amount of empathy. And I've also learned based on what I have felt most comforting when I have been the saddest, the words that people say, the actions that people take, has been a huge awakening. Because it's taught me what might be helpful when I see people.
Yeah. Right.
So it's just sort of been this really interesting circle and learning experience. And I'm grateful for it. I think my eyes are open to so much more. I am sad. I miss my dad. I wish he was here. There is nothing I would do, or nothing I wouldn't do, but he's not here. Right. So, and I still am.
Yeah.
So I think grief gives us an opportunity to grow.
Yeah.
And man, it's a painful growth, but it is growth.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all that. But I can't let you go without asking about music.
Mm.
You're such a singer for us all, and does music help in the process?
Music is, music is the sound of feelings and emotions. It is poetry that dances. It is everything that connects me, and that sort of grounds me. Music is such a huge part of that, and that has been a part of my life since I can remember. I have on days that I feel, and I would tell anybody that is going through a grieving process, don't be afraid to listen to those sad songs.
Yes.
It's okay. So don't be afraid to cry and maybe have a moment of wallowing. Because if you don't give it that space, music can be the voice of that moment.
The voice of the hurt.
Absolutely.
The voice of the grace and the voice of the gratitude. It comes, it's either
I'm so
way.
Grateful.
God's voice.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side of that, there is music that makes you feel uplifted and happy and joyful, and the sun shines a little bit brighter. So music is incredibly important to me. Not to just perform it, but to absorb it, to listen to it. And it exists in so many different places. It's a very important part of every one of my days. And my dad was a huge supporter of the music that I personally like to make, and music in general. He was always singing and making up songs, and you remember this old one? And then we'd break out into songs. So that's a big part of who I am.
Wow. Well, thank you for your gift of music here at the church. It's been huge for the rest of us, because very often it does something that you sing or that Kevin plays or that everybody does, any of our music ministry people, can be the voice of God for somebody else. And it's such a, whoa, how did you know I needed that today,
I always pull a little whenever I hear somebody singing, or whenever we're here, or in any of the songs that I'm singing, there's always something. That just, I really needed that. I really needed that. And if you're listening, it's like one of those things. If you're looking for it, you'll find it.
Yes.
And to talk about grace, I mean, you come in here and there's a lot of times I'm singing these songs and I think, I don't know if I'm going to do this too well. And it doesn't matter. I walk off and Kevin says, thank you. That was great. Or I'm so glad to be able to do this with you. And the vanity and the ego just comes right out of it, because it just becomes an experience, and I love it. I'm so grateful for it. I really am. So thank you.
Me too. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that, for sharing that. And we'll be back again next Monday with another conversation. And if you ever want to give us the benefit of your conversation, then get in touch with us here at Covenant. And we'll see you on a Wednesday or Friday for evening prayer as well. Good night.